Hello everyone and welcome back to part 25. So in this video we are going to implement the feature of sending and receiving friend request. Okay, and for that we are going to do socket.io setup. Okay, so without much talk, let's actually get right into coding. Okay, so the first thing that we are going to do here is to set up some schema, okay, on our server side. So let me actually close all of these open editors for now. Okay, and collapse all these files now. The first thing that we have to do here is to just go inside this models folder. Okay, then we'll be adding a new model, okay, for friend request. So I'm just going to create this new file, friend request.js. Okay, and then here we are going to create a new Mongoose schema. Okay, so as you have already seen in the previous video, okay, we can just require this Mongoose package here because this will be used to create a new schema. Okay, so after that is done, you can just create a new schema like this. First write the name of the schema that you want to create. So here I am just creating a new schema with the name of request schema. Okay, then we can use this new keyword, okay, along with this method mongoose dot schema. Okay, so just write this mongoose dot schema and call this. Here we can basically pass the configuration for this schema. Okay, you can pass different fields and also add virtual fields. So we'll talk about virtual fields in a separate course. Okay, for now we're just going to add simple properties that we want here. So the first thing that we want to store whenever there is a friend request is who is the sender of this request. Okay, and here we are not going to basically store the name and email of the sender, we are going to store its reference. Okay, and that we can basically do by storing the document ID of that user. Okay, so what I really want to say is that in MongoDB for each collection there is a unique ID, okay, with the key name underscore ID. We are just going to store that in place of the sender. Okay, so I'm just going to write the type as mongoose.schema.object ID. Okay, like this. Then so here we also have to pass this reference. Okay, and this is actually going to allow us to populate this field. Okay, then similarly we can add another property, and this is going to be with this name of recipient. Okay, like who is going to receive this friend request. Okay, now here also we are going to store the reference to a user, so I'm just going to copy and paste that here. Okay, that is simple. Then the last property for now that is going to be created at, okay, we just want to basically store when the request was received. Okay, so here we can store basically like this. I have defined its type as date. Okay, and then I'm also going to specify its default value, like whenever a new friend request is going to be created, the time at that point, okay, that is going to be stored here in this property by default. Okay, now we just need to basically use this schema to create a model. Okay, a model is going to be a blueprint, okay, on which we can make queries. Okay, so that is actually pretty self-explanatory. So here we can just write the name of the model, okay, and we'll be exporting that from this file. So I'm just going to call it friend request, and then we can just use this model method on Mongoose, okay, like this, and then pass the name of the model, okay, that we are creating. Then here we can just basically write the schema's name. Okay, now we have basically created this model, okay, and we are ready to basically export it from here. So I'm just going to write module.exports is equal to friend request. Okay, so now we are done with this friend request schema. Let's now actually move on to this user controller. Let me actually first tell you how we are going to do socket.io setup here. Okay, so first of all you have to go inside the server.js file because this is the entry point of our server. Okay, and we are going to do some setup code here, okay, which is basically going to create an instance of socket.io, okay, listen for events that we'll be receiving from our client side. So let's actually see how we can do all of this stuff. So before diving into it, the first thing that we need is the socket.io package. Okay, and we can just simply install it from npm. So here I'm just going to write npm I socket.io. Okay, just like this, and then press enter. Now after this package is installed, we are good to basically use that here. So I'm just going to write const, okay, and then I'll be getting this property server, okay, from socket.io package. So I can write here like this, const server require, okay, and then socket.io. Now what we are basically going to do, as you can see at line number 16 here, we have created our HTTP server, okay. I explained this while setting up the backend, okay. Now what we are going to do, we are going to create an instance of socket.io here, okay, and that will be created using this HTTP server that we already have in place. So what we can do, we can just simply use this new server, okay. The server is coming from this package that we just installed, okay. Now here we have to pass our HTTP server, okay, that we have already created. Then we can basically pass some configuration options here, okay. So here what we really need is course, okay. We need to set it up, otherwise we'll not be able to connect our client and our server side, okay. So here the first thing that we need to pass is origin. This is going to tell our server what origins or what base URIs we are going to allow to connect, okay. So here I'm going to write HTTP localhost 3000, okay, because our client application is going to run on this port, okay, port number 3000, and currently we are running it on local environment, okay. So that is why we have to pass this origin. Then we can also basically put restrictions on methods that will be allowed, okay. So we are, for now we are only allowing get and post methods, okay, that's it. Now after this IO is created, we can actually start to implement some listeners on it, okay. So the first thing that we are going to do is we are going to listen for the connection event, okay. So after this server.listen, I'm just going to write io.on, okay, and then the name of the event. So there is a event with the name of connection, okay. So this will be fired whenever a client side is going to connect to our server, okay. You can visualize it like this. We have a server, okay, which is running on a remote machine. Then we have multiple users using our client side application, okay. So when you will log into the application, okay, then you will send a request to our server in order to connect to it with real-time connection, okay, using socket.io. So whenever that happens, this event will be fired, okay, and we can listen to that using this io.on connection, okay. That's it. It's very simple. And when that happens, you can basically execute some kind of logic here, okay. So for that we are going to pass a callback here, okay. This is a very useful thing, and here we'll be basically getting an argument with, you can call whatever you want. I'm just going to call it socket because it's much more clear, okay. It's just like the request that we receive in a normal HTTP request, okay. It is going to contain various things, okay. So what we are basically going to do, we'll be passing a user ID, okay, that will be used for just a bypass for the authentication right now, okay. So let me just actually write that here, okay, then it will be much more easier to understand. So here we can basically get the user's ID from this socket that we'll be receiving. So what we are going to do, there is a property on this socket that will be called, that is basically called handshake, okay. And then I'm just going to access this property query, okay, and then we'll be accessing this property user ID, okay. Let me now actually explain you why we are writing this, okay. So this socket instance is going to contain multiple properties, okay, and one of them is handshake, and it is going to contain parameters that we are going to send from our client side. So whenever a client is going to connect to our server, we'll be sending a property with the name of user underscore ID from our client side, okay. We are doing this so that we can now actually query our database, okay, find this user's record based on this ID, and then here we are also going to basically get a unique ID for this connection that just happened, and I'm just going to call it socket underscore ID, okay. So that is very simple. We can just get it like this, right? Socket.id. That's it. Now why I'm doing this, okay, let me also write a console log here, okay, so that will be useful. Okay, when a connection happens, we'll be able to see some log here. So I'm just going to write user connected, okay, and then I'm just going to console log the socket ID. So I'll write socket underscore ID like this, right here. Then what we are going to do, as I just explained, based on the user ID that we'll be receiving from our client side, okay, we'll be updating the user's record. Simply we are going to store this socket ID, okay, because this will be needed whenever we want to emit some kind of event to any of our client or user. Okay, I hope I made that very clear. Okay, so that is a very crucial thing that we are going to do here. So as we are going to perform some kind of asynchronous operation here, so that is why I already placed this async keyword, okay, here at the top. Don't miss that. Okay, then here, since we are going to basically query this user collection, okay, so we have to access this model. Okay, you can see at the top we have this user model here imported. Okay, then here I'm just going to access this query, or I'm going to basically make this query find by ID and update. So as the name suggests, we are just going to find the user from our database based on the user's ID. Then we are going to basically update some property in it. Okay, so here we just have to pass the user's underscore ID value. Okay, so that is going to be this user underscore ID. Then we want to update this property which is called socket underscore ID. Okay, so right now we don't have any property defined in our user schema with this key name. Okay, so let's actually do that. So I'm just going to go inside this users model. Okay, and then at the bottom I'm just going to add few properties here. So the first thing that we just discussed is socket underscore ID. Okay, I'm just going to basically define that we are going to store a socket ID. Okay, and the type of this is going to be string. And then I also want to basically add one more property here, and that will be friends. Okay, let me explain you why we are doing this. So whenever a user is going to send a friend request to one another, okay, then what we are going to do, when the user accepts that friend request, okay, then we'll have to basically store their reference inside user. Okay, that means if I'm a user in this application, then it will be stored in my record, like who are my friends. Okay, their IDs with their reference will be stored. Okay, so that is actually pretty easy to understand. So we are just going to define that property here. We are going to write that its type will be object ID. Okay, and we have done this several times, so it must be easy for you by now. And this ID is basically going to refer to a user. Okay, now you can just basically format this document and save. Okay, now our changes are saved, and after this is done, we are basically going to listen for certain events from user. Okay, so what we have done till now, let me just do a quick recap. We have created a new schema with this name of friend request. Okay, then we have just set it up our socket IO instance here. Okay, as you can see, using our normal HTTP server. Okay, then we have allowed this origin and these methods. Okay, this is very important to do, otherwise you will not be able to connect your client and server. Okay, so please take care of that. After that, we are listening for this event connection. Okay, this is a default event that is going to basically happen. Okay, whenever there is a connection established between client and server. So whenever that is going to happen, okay, then we are going to listen for that, and then we are going to also act on that. Like, we'll be receiving some argument here with this name of socket, which is going to contain multiple properties. I would recommend that you log this into your console. Okay, I would recommend that you log this socket into your console and check it out by yourself, like what properties does this contain. Okay, One of them is handshake. We can basically get any query that we'll be passing from our client side during connection, okay, like this. So we have extracted that here. I'm just going to comment out this console log line for now, okay. And then we have our socket ID. We are logging to the console that the user is connected with its socket ID, okay. This will be unique for each connection that will be established. And if we have a valid user ID, then we'll just fetch that user's document and update this socket ID, okay. Now after this is done, we can actually start to use the socket ID that we just stored to do some actual task here, okay. So for now, as we are just starting, I'm just going to give you just an example, okay. So let me actually first write this comment here, like we can write our socket event listeners here, okay. So we can just simply say that socket.on, okay. And then if we are basically emitting some kind of event from our client side, so let's say whenever I want to send a friend request, okay, then what we are going to do from our client side, we'll be emitting an event with this name, friend underscore request, okay. So this is an event that will be defining inside our application, okay. And we are going to also listen for that on our server side, okay. So whenever this event is going to be fired, we can listen for it, okay. And then I'm just going to basically again pass a callback here, which is going to perform some kind of operation for me, okay. Then what we are basically doing here is, whenever let's say I am user A, okay, then I connected to this application, okay, connection is established, my user record is updated, okay. Then if my instance, okay, I am user A, if user A is going to send or emit this event, okay, then we'll be able to listen for that here, okay, and accordingly we'll be performing some operation here, okay. So that's just an example, you can basically generalize that, okay. And we'll be basically sending some data from our client side. Let me actually write here what payload we are going to send. For now we'll be just sending a property with this name of 2. What this is going to contain, this 2 will be some user ID, okay. So if we have a user on our database, okay, let's say their ID is this, okay, it's just an example. So we'll be basically passing their ID to our server, okay. Like I want to send a friend request to the user with this ID. I hope that is clear, okay. So we can actually get that here like this, okay. I'll be querying that user's record, okay, from our database. So I'll write this query here, user dot find by ID, okay. And since, as I just explained, we are going to get the user's ID in this data.to property, okay, so we can get it like this. Now what we are going to do after we have received a friend request, okay, so I am user A, I have sent a friend request to a user with this ID, okay. Then I must send an alert to the user with this ID data.to, okay, that you have received a new friend request. So for that we are going to use this io.to, okay, and then we can pass a individual's socket ID here, okay. And as we just explained here, okay, we are storing each user's socket ID in their collection, okay, or sorry, in their record with this property name socket underscore ID. So I'm just going to refer to that, okay, here like this, to dot socket underscore ID. I'm just going to say that if you are finding this difficult at this point, okay, then don't worry, I'm going to again explain this to you in the next video with a PDF, okay, and I'll also send that PDF on our Discord server, okay. So if you haven't joined that yet, make sure to do that, okay. That will be very useful, and we'll be using much more methods, okay, that I'm not showing it to you currently, like creating a room, okay, creating namespaces, and then sending and receiving messages. We'll also be doing authentication, okay, because this is not a correct way to do it here, okay. We'll be checking if the user is currently logged in, they have a correct token or not, okay. So we are going to do all of that stuff. I'm just doing very simple things for now, okay. You can just rewatch this video if you find it difficult to understand, okay. I'm not going to keep this video long so that you don't have a hard time understanding this, okay. Now what we are going to do, we can basically call this emit method here, okay, and then we can basically write the name of the event that we want to emit, okay. So we are going to emit a particular event to a socket ID, okay, or to a particular client, you can say, and then we are passing that the name of that event is going to be new friend request, and here we can basically pass some data, or you can say payload, okay, to this user. So here we'll basically say, we'll be first of all basically creating a friend request. So I'll just write this comment here, create a friend request, and that is going to actually make use of this friend request schema that we just created, okay. And for now I'm just going to write that it's a to-do task. So we'll just do a query here, okay, and then we'll send a notification, okay, to the user who is going to receive this friend request. So you can do that here like this, and then we'll be able to send some kind of data like this friend request ID, okay, which is going to contain this recipient and sender information. So I hope that is very clear to you, okay, and I'm just going to format this document for now. Let me also actually create a controller here inside this user controller file, okay. So when we'll be implementing the UI for this friend request feature, okay, then we'll need an endpoint which we can basically query, and it will give us all of the details like what friend requests do we currently have, who are our friends at the moment, and who are all of the users that we can send or receive friend requests from, okay. So there has to be an endpoint for that, okay, because we are going to display a list on our UI and then take actions from there. So for that we are going to create a new controller here, and I'm just going to call it get users. So I'll write exports dot get users, okay, and as usual this is again going to get these arguments request, response, and next, like this, okay. Then what logic we are going to actually implement here, let me actually explain that to you in detail. So first of all we'll be getting all of the users from our database here. So I'll just write await then user.find like this, and here I'm going to basically pass some filtering criteria. So we are going to basically get only verified users from our database, and then I'll also be restricting the fields that we'll be getting from this query. So I'm just going to allow first name, last name, and user's ID, okay. So what I'm actually doing, you can see in our users schema we have so many properties, okay, and what I am basically writing here is that when I am doing this query, I just want all of the users whose verified status is set to true, and for all the records I just want these three properties, first name, last name, and underscore ID, okay. That means I'm not allowing password or any other properties, okay, beside these three to be included inside this query, okay. Then we can get this particular user's ID from our request, okay, because this is going to be a protected request, okay. So that there will be this protect middleware before we hit this next middleware get users, okay. So this will be implemented in the flow. Let me show it to you. We have created it here with the name of protect. So the request will be going through this middleware first of all, okay, and as you can see towards the end of this middleware we are basically passing this property request.user, okay, and then calling this next function. So we'll be able to access this property here like this. I hope that is clear. Now I'm just going to get all of the remaining users. What I mean when I say remaining users, let me actually write the query, okay, and that will make things very clear. So const remaining users is equal to, first of all I'm just going to do a filtering here on this all users. Okay, so I'm just going to call this filter method that we can use on an array inside JavaScript. Then we'll be getting each user one by one inside this. Then here please focus on the condition that I'm about to write. Not this user dot friends dot includes user dot id. So what I'm basically writing here is I'm just making sure that we are sending only those users who are not our friends already. Okay, I'm just filtering out all those users who are already our friends. Okay, and then in the next condition I'm going to write that this user's id, okay, I'll just make sure that this is in the proper string type. Okay, because there is a huge difference between Mongoose id and a string. Okay, so that is why I'm just using this toString method here, because I am about to make a comparison. Okay, so I'll write user dot underscore id. Okay, then I've made sure that it is in the form of a string. Then we'll write request dot user dot underscore id to string. So what this condition, this second condition really means is that we are not basically sending ourselves. Okay, like if I am user A, I am logged into the application and I am viewing all of the people that I can send friend request to. Okay, then I'm just going to exclude all of my current friends. Okay, which is basically denoted by this first condition, and I am also going to exclude myself from this list. Okay, so I hope that is very clear to you. Then we can just send a response back to the user. So I'll just write response.status. We'll send a status code of 200. That means everything went well. Okay, we are going to basically pass some JSON data as usual. I'll just give this a status of success, right? And then we can basically pass this data remaining users. Let's also give a message here, users found successfully, right? And let's actually finish this task, okay, by setting up a router for this as well. Please note that we are also going to make some changes here, okay, but I'll come back to that later and explain it to you in other videos. Okay, that will be after this. So here we just need to go inside this users router here. Then we can just create a new basically route here. So I'm just going to write router.post. Okay, and then I'll just say get users. Okay, and as I just discussed, this request that we are about to make is going to be a protected request. That means the user has to be logged in order to request this data. Okay, so that is why we are going to place this middleware auth controller dot protect before calling this user controller dot get users. Okay, so I hope that makes sense to you. Okay, so we have done pretty much everything that we need to do in order to just get started by sending and receiving socket events. Okay, so in the next video, what we are going to do will be actually creating the UI for this friend request feature. Okay, then we'll be adding some more logic here. We'll be refining the current logic that we have written, and our friend request feature will be completed. Towards the end of the next video, I'll be discussing all of the different ways in which we can communicate between client and server using socket. Okay, so I'll be basically providing a PDF for that because I have already created that. Okay, and it is going to contain a lot of information, so please make sure that you join the Discord server if you haven't done that yet. Okay, that is only going to take 2 minutes. And also please don't forget to like this video, make sure you comment. Okay, that is going to allow this video to reach more people. I'll appreciate that very much. That's it for this video. I'll see you in the next one. Thank you for watching.